This is John Murphy at Murtech.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on November the 30th, the last day of November, heading into December tonight. 11/30, 2025 in the year of our Lord 2025. Okay, we got a lot of great information, so let's go ahead and click the Murtech on Rumble link and take us over here to the live stream episode 1762. Let's go ahead and jump into that. And hi, M41 Coco. She's already joined us in the chat. Glad to see you here. Let's scroll down. And, yep, there's M41 Coco. Let's scroll down here and click the Show More button to expand out the description box. And we have information from Bannons War Room, Black Conservative Perspective, Dr. Steve Turley, and X22 Report. But before we get into that, we've got a lot of shout outs to give. From Dana Mad, just started following my channel. Doubler647 just started following my channel. So thank you folks for following my channel. I greatly appreciate that. I hope you're tuned in and I hope you enjoy the content. All right, Ms. Flintstone 17 reposted my video daily news wrap up from last night. Debbie BS reposted my video 1761 from last night. Big John Perez, Deb Rant, G5 Uz, Uncloudy, and Big John Perez commented on my episode 1761 from last night. And Debbie BS, I guess she had a lot of catching up to do over Thanksgiving weekend. She commented on my extra 545A, 545B, and 545C. Also, Debbie BS and Uncloudy commented on my extra 546A, and Debbie BS commented on my extra 546B, and Doubler 647 and Debbie BS commented on my extra 546C. So thank you very much, folks, for your comments. I greatly appreciate your input. Enjoy reading your feedback, and I appreciate your support. So let me go ahead and give this a thumbs up. Boom. There it is. There it is. And I have one of those thumbs up icons right here under the video that you're watching right now. So if you would click that, that would definitely help get this information out. All right. Here we go with Bannons War Room. Zelensky's right-hand man removed because the U.S. is pivoting to Reconstruction. That sounds interesting. Let's check that out.
Ben Hardenwood, you called this last week. It was Rustam Umerov. And they said he was going to quit now. Zelensky just put out a tweet. He's en route, I guess, to the United States as the head negotiator now. And they're saying, hey, we can work so fast and so quickly. Here's the reason. Their army is collapsing. With all the pounding that army's taken and over 1.5 million, I think it's 1.75 million casualties now. The pounding they've taken, without a massive infusion of American arms and American cash, there's no way they can take the onslaught of the Russians, because the Russians lost over 2 million. They don't care. They don't care how many they lose, right? It's not relevant to Putin. This thing is drawing to a bloody conclusion, and they want a deal that America gets.
Now, I want to just stop right there. Okay. They're claiming Ukraine has lost 1.75 million people, soldiers, I guess. And Russia has lost 2 million. That's almost 4 million people in the last, 3 years? Pretty amazing. Especially since we supposedly lost 50,000 troops in Vietnam over 10 years. Okay, we'll go with what they say, but that sounds pretty amazing to me.
Guarantees. It has a security guarantee and a sovereignty guarantee for the Ukraine. There's been all kind of reports out that this has kind of been hidden, et cetera. We got to have you can't hide anything on this. You got to have a full discussion, a full national debate on whether the American people are prepared to commit the sovereignty of Ukraine. When you have people like Yermak to run the government, it's not Zelensky. Zelensky's the actor. Yermak has always been the chief thug, has he not, Ben Harnwell?
Steve, good morning to you. Look, my eyes were their most reptilian when I saw this news breaking. Famous for my beady cynicism. When I saw this news breaking yesterday, I was like a rather hungry viper looking at a fat, lazy mouse. And I thought, wow, this is some story. So firstly, let's just repeat what Steve Cortez and Jack Posobiec were saying earlier. This guy is the number one in Ukraine, and he wasn't. If I just add to what Jack Posobiec was saying with his first eyewitness account there, he was not as if he wasn't wandering around the White House as if he were a big shot. He is the big shot. He's the showrunner, right? Giving their heft to a second-rate comedian's credibility. He's the guy. Yermak was the guy when people were flying over, doing the trips to Kiev over the last 3.5 years. Yermak was the guy who's basically sort of having the serious sit-down and policy discussions with them. So there are a few things to break down on this story, and I'm going to start off with what Tucker Carlson said just it was a couple of days ago, when he said, and this is absolutely fascinating if true, that the Wall Street Journal was sitting on this story that Yermak had been grifting out hundreds of millions of dollars given by the US for Ukraine aid, and they'd been sitting on that story and suppressing it for many months. So firstly, I'm going to start off with that, and that was 4 days ago. This is before Yermak's home and office was raided and he resigned it, okay? So the first thing to say is, okay, so the Wall Street Journal had this, then everyone else in the Murdoch empire will have had that as well, and they sat on it. So that's obviously, and we could talk for 2 hours on a whole morning show just breaking that down. That means that underlines everything that the War Room has been saying for 3.5 years about Fox lying to people about keeping this war going. That's the first point. Second point extends from that. If the Wall Street Journal knew that this guy was grifting hundreds of millions of US dollars, then presumably American intelligence knew as well. Right, we're not in opposition. Right, MAGA currently controls the executive, if not the House, in name only. Let's call John Ratcliffe and find out, what did the CIA know about Yermak's corruption? When did it know it, and why has it been suppressing this? That's the second point that comes off from that. Thirdly, Steve, my point is more concerning about the timing of this. This broke yesterday on Black Friday. I, like everyone else in America, we were all off doing sort of various other things, thinking that there's going to be no news. Why did they get rid of this guy at probably the worst time for a news cycle? There's something in that. And of course, people are going to say, firstly, so that means that the mainstream media is going to cooperate in the burial of this story. That's going to go down the memory hole. And then if you mention it, they're going to say, oh, well, look, he's gone. He was raided by the corruption people, and then he resigned. That's the system working. They're going to lie to you. They're going to look you in the eye, and they're going to lie to you and gaslight you. My fear about this, Steve, and I'll hand back to you on this point, is to do with the timing of this. I have been, as I've said on the show for quite some time, I am extremely concerned about some of the pressure that the US administration is putting on Ukraine right now. Like the commitment part of the plan was to have elections within 100 days, which obviously Zelensky, one will presume he's going to lose. And to see that Andrei Yermak, the chief of staff, Ukraine's lead negotiator with the United States, has been forced out at this point. I'm sensing a pivot is in action here, and I'm guessing that the US is behind it. My standing presumption, I have no evidence for this, my standing presumption, however, is that it's the US that told Zelensky this guy has got to go. And it's a precursor, of course, for him going as well. This all follows on the golden toilet thing, right? It's a precursor for getting Zelensky out. Why am I so concerned? Because getting out the most toxic, poisonous representative of Ukraine at this time and confecting the great switcheroo of bringing in Ambassador General Zelensky currently exiled in London, is the means of keeping something going. And by the way, I'm not talking about war here. I have never said on this show that the war is the mother of all grifts. What I've repeatedly said about the mother of all grifts is that's the reconstruction of Ukraine. And my fear is that the administration is some way involved in getting out Yermak now, because the pivot is already in act, and they're trying to move from the military aspect of this grift to the reconstruction side. This is no news, however. I'll close with this point, hand back to you. Look, what have we called Zelensky for 3.5 years on this show? We've called him 10% ski, because the grift was so well known and so visible, so in your face. That's exactly the respect we showed this guy. We called him President 10% ski. That's the regime he's been leading. And the mainstream media and Fox and all the other sort of so-called MAGA adjacent US organizations outside of real America's voice have been saying, no, this is Zelensky's the new Churchill and what have you. They have all been looking the American people in the eye and lying to them. This guy, the most important man in Ukraine, I'd say he was more important even than Zelensky himself, has been running a grifting operation, pulling out hundreds of millions of dollars of American taxpayer dollars intended for aid in Ukraine, and he's been siphoning them off. And the Wall Street Journal knew about it. The Murdoch Empire knew about it. I'd guess American intelligence knew about it, and nobody said anything. Now they're getting rid of him because they're pivoting to something else. That is my fear, Steve.
Well, President Trump has got the weight of the world on his shoulders, trying to bring priests because he wants more people killed. I just don't see how you get there. The Ukrainian demands are still – the Russians won the war on the battlefield, and they're going to continue to grind and take Odessa, and this war is going to grind on. So President Trump's tried to move heaven and earth, but I don't know even what the ask of the Europeans and the Ukrainians is still so over the top, right? To have no basis in reality. And what are they going to do? They want to depend upon. They have all these asks, but they want the United States to shoulder the entire burden. I just don't see that happening. Ben, great. You've been on this and dead spot on for now, over 3 years in this thing. Great job on your Mac. Where do people go to get all your beady-eyed analysis over this holiday weekend?
Get us my social media platform of choice. Tap in my surname at Harnwell, and I've got sort of some stuff of this, and I'll be posting more over the weekend. Steve, look, let me just close with this point. I am not sure how much longer this war can go on. Really? President Putin came out using the Professor Mearsheimer expression in the last 24 hours, and Putin said, they'll keep this war going until they've killed every last Ukrainian. I don't think the army's any position now to offer much further resistance. So something is happening behind the scenes on this. That's why I fear we're at the pivot point where the grift will switch from arms manufacturer to reconstruction. And I'm seeing reconstruction, and I'm seeing the exiling to the front line of Andrei Yermak in this line. That this is part of that process.
All right,
sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sticking.
All right, let's jump over here on the Rumble link. This does come from Bannons War Room. I'm following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here and see what's next. That would be Black Conservative Perspective. Republicans deliver reality check to liberals declaring MAGA is dead. And Democrat blue wave midterm. Oh, okay. We'll have to see about that. Here we go.
Go to the data, CNN's own data from our own data analyst Harriet. President Trump has an 87% approval rating among Republicans, which is higher than Barack Obama's approval rating among Democrats at this point in his term, higher than where George W. Bush was in his term. He is the strongest for his own party, strongest president at this point in his second term in the modern era. That's number one. Number two, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, had a falling out with the president over politics. He showed her a poll that said she couldn't win statewide in Georgia. That's exactly. She got mad. She got mad. And by the way, she stands with a group of isolationists who just happen to disagree with the president over, say, taking away Iran's nuclear weapons and some other issues. That's fine. He's the president. She's not. And if you want to talk about whether the president has a hold on his party or whether he's a lame duck, I'll just submit that when he withdrew his endorsement of Green, she lasted a week and then had to resign from Congress. That's not weakness. That is
a couple things about that, Scott, because first of all, I think you understand that a lot of Trump's MAGA base is not just people who are registered Republicans. A lot of them are people who are new to the system.
I've heard from many folks who were Trump supporters, voted for Trump both times, who's like, well, this is not what I voted for. And what they're referring to specifically are families being torn apart, kids being having their parents picked up and taken away from in front of schools, from having restaurant workers and other folks who are hardworking but undocumented, being disappeared from their community. And I think the rhetoric and the reality are now crashing together of when you talk about illegals and violence versus the people that are in a community that have been working there and building relationships. There is a massive disconnect.
I would like to go back, though, and I'm interested in your two-time Trump voting friends who are apparently phone banking you that are surprised that he is interested in enforcing our immigration laws. Because it is literally what he's been running on since he started in 2015. If you voted for Donald Trump 2 or 3 times and you're unsure about why he's deporting people, I dispute it.
So
I'm just
Scott,
sorry.
We are on totally the same page.
Boy. So once again, we got to talk about this topic that continues to be a big talking point online, which is this idea that MAGA is dead, that Trump is in the water, his second administration has been a complete and total failure. Nobody got what they voted for. All of this stuff that you see mainly online. And I've already talked about this before, but I want to go over some new data points once again to put some context around a lot of this stuff, because like I told you guys in the past, a lot of this stuff is being said by people who first and foremost are not MAGA, right? This is coming from leftists, liberals who are trying to divide MAGA, and people who, are on the conservative side of the aisle, who are right-wing, who probably are more independent-leaning, who just recently started to identify with MAGA, or people who, were historically MAGA that see President Trump not being able to run again as an opportunity, right? A lot of this really is about personal agendas rather than the reality of MAGA or how Republican voters are really feeling about President Trump at this point in time. But I want to go ahead and play this clip because, again, this narrative is being pushed by people all over the place.
Now, that interview with Nick Fuentes is not just about Nick Fuentes. It's also about Tucker Carlson. And maybe Tucker is trying to create more of a wedge in MAGA, but it's clear that people are looking for the next messenger for Trump after Trump. Who do you think it's going to be?
I think President Trump has made it very clear he'd like to see J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. There are many people who can speak eloquently to what the MAGA base is about, which is growing our economy, stopping illegal immigration, putting Americans first, which is what Make America Great Again means, is Americans first and Americans doing what we can do to grow and live in the best country in the world. But I want to go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a second. Just because she left the party isn't indicative of some larger MAGA revolt and President Trump's grasp on the MAGA movement. She is someone who blew up his phone multiple times a day, acting like she was the center of the universe and main character syndrome, when in reality, President Trump's job is not member maintenance and dealing with a specific member of Congress. He is the leader of the free world who has a lot more on his plate than returning Marjorie Taylor Greene's calls back every 5 minutes.
But it's not.
If he invades Venezuela or gives more money to Ukraine, his movement will dissolve.
The American dream will officially be dead, and millions of voters will forever associate MAGA with its decline. Welcome to the midterms. Welcome to 2028. This is the barrel of the gun that we are looking down.
I was done with MAGA at the moment he looked us in the face and he said, "What files?" Right? What are we still talking about? Jeffrey Epstein? Pam Bondi said it was a Democrat hoax. No, I think the entire nation has been hoaxed by Republicans and Democrats.
MAGA is dead. Now we're in the America First debate. Soon it's going to be the America Only debate.
Does voting matter anymore? I don't know. I don't know whether voting matters so much. Like, looking back, I mean, we didn't really have much of an option here, but I mean, at least so we thought. But nothing I voted for happened.
Listen, regardless of where you land on the political spectrum, I think we could all admit Sean Ryan is all of us in what he said in that clip, because I think most Americans feel disappointed with the politicians they support, vote in favor of, and then they, again, like to pull the rug from underneath you, and they don't live up to their promises. But that is ripping the GOP base, the Republican base, apart at this moment. And it really has to do with the performance of the Trump administration.
Yeah. So let me just restate once again, because you have to put context behind this stuff, and you have to understand the agenda, right, of a lot of people who are pushing this, right? Leftists who are pushing this, their agenda is to break MAGA apart. Why? Because they want MAGA voters or leftists. That's what they want. That's why leftists are pushing this, because they see this as an opportunity. People who are, again, independent leaning, who just started identifying as MAGA, who previously hated Trump, by the way, but again, they started identifying as MAGA going into the 2024 election because it was cool, right? It was cool to be MAGA going into the 2024 election. You were a loser, okay, or a low testosterone man if you decided to identify with Kamala Harris, right? So it was the cool thing to do. A lot of these people are disappointed because, they don't like the fact that they think that Trump is too pro-Israel, or that he's Netanyahu's puppet or something, which, I find to be interesting because President Trump in his first administration was pretty pro-Israel, right? I thought that everybody just kind of knew that President Trump was very pro-Israel, but for as pro-Israel as President Trump is and historically has been, he also has shown a willingness to push back against Israel in ways that other presidents refuse to do so, right? Like, for example, if it was up to Israel, we would still be in a war with Iran, which we never actually went to war with Iran. We bombed Iran because of our own interests, not just because of Israel's interests. We bombed them out of our own interests. And despite the fact that Israel wanted us to continue to do more, right? If it was up to Israel, we would have a full-blown ground invasion of Iran. We would be in Iran fighting right now. President Trump said no. He actually made Iran and Israel stop fighting, despite the fact that they didn't want to stop fighting. He also forced the Israelis into this current, very fragile, I will admit, very fragile ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, right? He got back the hostages. And right now, again, it's not perfect. I understand there's been some casualties here and there. There's been some fighting here and there, but it's still a much better situation than it was when Biden was in office. And it's certainly better than it would have been if Kamala was in office, right? So President Trump has shown a willingness to twist Netanyahu's arms when Israel wants to do things that diverge from our interests, right? And he has done that in ways that, again, we have not seen any other president do with the Israelis, right? So, again, I just find some of these criticisms, specifically that criticism, to be extremely fascinating. Also, on top of that, the other individuals, right, who are on the right, okay, who are saying, oh, I'm not MAGA anymore or whatever, right? Those people are interesting because I feel like President Trump has done quite a bit in regards to what MAGA voted for. Like, for example, I mean, he's essentially rid this country of wokeness at the corporate level, at the government level. When you talk about immigration, he's closed the border, secured the border. He's executing on the mass deportations. Liberals are losing their minds left and right. They're protesting in the street, rioting over it, right? That's how well he's doing. He has at least 500,000 illegals deported already. Again, despite the sanctuary cities, despite the Democrats fighting him tooth and nail at the local level to stop the mass deportations, to obstruct. And that doesn't even count the people who've self-deported. We have net negative migration in this country for the first time in a long time. When it comes to this issue of immigration, MAGA should be extremely happy, okay? He's also going out his way to try to fight crime in a lot of these liberal cities across the country. He's cracking down on crime. When it comes to the economy, yes, the economy is a work in progress, but we're seeing some signs that, again, the president's policies are working. Like, for example, gas is the lowest that it's been in a long time. He's already done the supply side stimulus with a big, beautiful bill. You're not going to see the effects of that until next year, right? Again, a lot of this is just impatience. People are just not patient enough to let the policies work. Yeah, President Trump didn't do as much as we wanted when it came to Doge and cutting down the federal bureaucracy, but hey, guys, it's not a dictatorship, right? President Trump is not a king. That's what we found out, that, hey, when you try to cut the bureaucracy, guess what? The bureaucracy fights back. And then also on top of that, people, a lot of government workers, they lost their jobs, and then those individuals got out and they voted. They voted specifically in places like Virginia. That showed up in the election. Yeah, stuff like that happens, but we can't say that President Trump has not put in a good faith effort to do what he promised that he was going to do. We may get some type of ceasefire or some type of peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia soon. Again, he's trying to do things. And, you know, for me personally, it's frustrating that people don't have enough patience to wait at least a year, right? I mean, really, you should give them at least 2 years, realistically, because, again, things take time. But we're talking about 8 to 9 months in, and people are talking about, oh, MAGA's falling apart. Even though when it comes to, again, the core part of the MAGA agenda, President Trump has done an amazing job, realistically, in my opinion, fulfilling his promises. Now, again, would I like to see him do more? Like, for example, cut government spending? Sure, but that's not even up to the president, to be honest with you. That's up to the Republicans, and Republicans certainly are not doing that, and Democrats aren't doing it, right? And no politician, no major political party will ever significantly cut spending, because if you do that, then people are going to boo-hoo, whine, and cry about that. People are going to say, oh, my welfare is going away, my Social Security is getting cut, my Medicaid is being cut, my Medicare is being cut, the military is being cut. Yeah, if you actually cut the budget like it should be cut, right, in order to have deflation, right, which is what a lot of people, you know, say that they want, that comes with a cost. That comes with a cost. That comes with a huge cost. Can the American people really stomach that? Probably not, right? My
Chicago Steak Company is dedicated to providing you the ultimate steak experience. Great pride goes into our products, and this is evident throughout the whole process behind our steaks.
Hi, I'm Chef Philippe. I've been a corporate chef for over 25 years, and I'm here to tell you that the ultimate steak experience starts with the beef. The origin, the feed, and the care. Here at Chicago Steak Company, all of our cattle is 100% domestic, and it is raised here in the Midwest. We offer both grass-fed and corn-fed option, and all of our cattle is treated humanely and with focus on sustainability. The very best beef comes from cattle that are allowed to roam free and graze on open plains. This attention to animal welfare is key to providing the absolute best beef, and that's what we deliver. But you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to what others are saying about Chicago Steak Company.
Thousands of 5-star customer reviews are posted all over the web. Inc. magazine listed us as a top gift for the foodie in your life, and Business Insider dubbed our steaks unforgettable. Our steaks competed head-on in a blind taste test of America's top beef purveyors. This great steak debate was hosted by Iron Chef Mark Forgione, and Chicago Steak Company won the People's Choice Award for Best Steak. It's clear that a Chicago Steak Company steak is the ultimate steak experience.
Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, coming to you from beautiful but very crisp Connecticut. We've got some breaking news on who's behind this Afghan asylum shooter, Rahmanullah Lakhanwal, who ambushed our National Guard on American soil in D.C. So while the legacy media is obsessed with the question, why did he do it? Why did he do it so they can desperately try to blame Trump for this? That really is the wrong question. We all know why he did it. Come on, let's be, but he hates America. He hates everything America first. Why he did it isn't the question. The real question is who paid him to be here? Who put a roof over his head? Who funded his life while he plotted against our soldiers. What we're finding out here is going to absolutely shock you. So let's start with the sort of nice part of this story. The Economic Times is reporting that Stanley and Valerie Creighton, a wealthy couple who live in a $3 million home in Bellingham, Washington, they were the ones who hosted this alleged shooter, right? So apparently they vetted him themselves, or so they thought. They appeared to be your, quintessential bougie liberals. They launched a fundraiser for him. They collected cash from their friends to support the very man who would go on to open fire on our uniformed troops. They called him a hero. They vouched for him. And in effect, what they were doing, whether they realized it or not, is that they were serving as foot soldiers in the open borders agenda. They willingly invited the danger into their own upscale communities. They patted themselves on the back for being progressive and tolerant. And then, I don't know, I guess they're looking the other way when the inevitable happens. But here's the kicker. The Creightons are just the symptom. They are not the disease. And you have to ask yourself, how did Lachenwall get here in the first place? Who lobbied for the Operation Allies welcome program that skipped real vetting? Remember, he came here after Biden's disastrous Afghan withdrawal from Kabul that ended up getting over a dozen American servicemen and women killed. And they subsequently launched what they called Operation Allies welcome. Again, these Biden operation names, these bills, they're always the opposite of what they claim to be. So the Inflation Reduction Act actually increased inflation because it was just a Green New Deal slush fund and giveaway. Obama's Affordable Care Act made healthcare more unaffordable. They always name these bills and operations with the opposite of their inevitable effects. So this one was called Operation Allies welcome. So this Afghan national was supposed to be an ally. Who do you think funds the massive networks at NGOs that process these people and dump them in your towns? It's, of course, none other than the George Soros machine, the George Soros Democrats, right? Reports are now exploding that the Department of Justice is finally looking into Soros's Open Society foundations for funding groups linked to domestic extremism. But it goes deeper. The entire infrastructure that brings people like Lachenwall in the United States, the lawyers who sue to keep them here, the nonprofits that pay their rent, the lobbyists who wrote the policies for the Biden administration, it turns out that that entire infrastructure swims in dark money. So we know billions of your tax dollars and hundreds of millions of dark money donations have created what some are calling basically your refugee industrial complex. They actually profit from the chaos, right? That's what we found with USAID. You remember when Doge uncovered, what Doge uncovered was how NGOs used their supposed humanitarianism as a cover to just wash themselves in left-wing causes and all this money. They fund the displacement of all these refugees. And when one of their projects turns violent, they scrub the websites, they delete the fundraisers, they hide, they do everything they can do to project the blame onto others. So while the Creightons raised a few $1,000s, it's the Soros-backed network that spent billions ensuring that our borders remain wide open to threats just like this one. They paid for the lawyers, they paid for the lobbyists, and in a very real sense, I think we could say they paid for the bullet. What's so important for us to get here is that this DC shooter did not act alone. He was supported by an entire system, an NGO network designed to put Americans last. And this is where the RICO charges come in. Thus far, we've seen it in connection with Antifa, in the shadow of their being officially declared a domestic terrorist organization. Soros's foundations are reportedly the targets of a racketeering investigation under RICO statutes. Remember, RICO laws were designed deliberately to take down organized crime syndicates. And the key with RICO charges is that you don't have to go all the way to trial for the catastrophic consequences of RICO charges to take effect. One of RICO's most powerful features is the ability to freeze assets before trial. And the key here is that that prevented targeted organizations from moving assets offshore, liquidating holdings to fund their defense. This is one of the reasons why, I mean, I can absolutely assure you, Soros is freaking out here because just the very fact that his foundations would be subject to RICO charges is enough to basically bankrupt them. Well, thus far, the only rationale for such a racketeering investigation was Soros's alleged connections to Antifa. Now he's reportedly connected to an entire web of NGOs that have created the open borders conditions for the National Guard shootings that just shocked DC. So Trump is already going full animal on third world migrants like the Somalis in Minneapolis. He's calling it now reverse migration, a full court deportation press that promises to rid our nation of upwards of 10, possibly 15 or 20 million third world migrants. He's going full animal on that. And now it looks increasingly like he's about to drop the hammer once and for all on Soros. So obviously we'll be keeping a very close eye on how things develop here. But right now there is no question, like we talked about in yesterday's video, what happened this Thanksgiving weekend in DC, those shootings, promises to change our nation like never before. And if you're an open borders liberal billionaire like George Soros, that is not good news.
It's our nation's capital. You shouldn't be worried about driving your car that you're going to get carjacked by a bunch of teenagers who have this gang mentality and they know that there's absolutely no consequences. Ironically enough, I mean, and I know there's other crimes going on in DC, but the man that he's one of the men he's referring to that saved the day happens to be Ed Korestein, also known as Big Balls from Doge, which is really kind of incredible. He's not just a hero saving our tax dollars, but he also stepped in as a good citizen to help a fellow citizen who is being attacked by this gang mentality that, you know, they know there's no consequences because crime is out of control. So I just thought that was noteworthy.
Yes. And, you know, something, if we just take this into perspective of how much crime there is in DC, and here's some statistics. Capital homicide rates in all different cities. DC is 41 per 100,000. Lima, Peru is 7 per 100,000. Havana, Cuba is 4 per 100,000. Nairobi, Kenya, 5 per 100,000. Brasilia in Brazil, 13 per 100,000. Lagos in Nigeria, 15 per 100,000. Mexico City in Mexico, 8 per 100,000. So isn't it strange that DC has the worst capital homicide rates of all these different countries? I mean, that's horrific.
It's horrific. It's outrageous, and it doesn't belong in the United States. And I think what's happened is that it's this crime mentality. It just swept through, specifically in blue cities, ironically enough, because there are no consequences. I don't think it's an accident that thankfully Judge Jeanine got confirmed last week by the Senate to be in place, because she's a very, she was a prosecutor for many years in New York. She's an amazing judge. And I think it's no accident that now she's in DC and she's ready to take care of business. She had just said the other day that she met with President Trump, and he's done with this crime wave that's going on in our nation's capital, and he's ready to federalize. And which led me into wondering, what does that exactly mean? Because as most of you probably know, DC is very different. It's not a typical state. It's the District of Columbia. It runs a little bit differently. So which led me to research, like, well, how does that exactly work? Because of what he was talking about in his post that he put up about federalizing DC. What does that exactly mean? And is he allowed to do that? And he absolutely is. Because according to the Insurrection Act of 1807, the president can deploy federal troops or assume control over local forces, including DC's National Guard, to maintain order, suppress rebellion, or enforce federal law when local authorities can't handle a crisis. So that, to me, is very interesting that he alludes to that, because it almost feels like he's putting the crime people on notice. This is what's going to happen if you keep pushing this.
And yeah, he needs to change DC. Especially because, the mayor there, Muriel Bowser, you could see that over time, she's not helped the city whatsoever. She actually put up the whole BLM, painting on the streets. She was all for the riots. She never, got the law enforcement to come in and take control of the situation. And when you start to look at all the other states in this country that are run by Democratic mayors, even though the state might be run by a Republican as governor, the mayors control their cities. Now, what's very interesting about all this is that, like Newscom and many others, they keep saying, oh, look at the crime rates in the red states. But you have to remember, the Republican might be the governor, but the mayor is a Democrat. And they like to point to who's running the state, but not who's actually running the city. And that's how they get around or try to convince people that it's really bad under Republican leadership.
Well, I think it's really easy to point fingers. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, you have to take action. Everyone's really great at grandstanding and telling you this isn't okay, and you're a piece of what, and and the name calling and this, that, and the finger pointing, and you sound like a bunch of 10-year-olds on the playground instead of actually doing something in the roles that you were allegedly, supposedly, hopefully elected into doing. And, I think people are just getting sick and tired of the grandstanding and the soundbite and the, I want to be viral on TikTok moment. People want to see action. People want to feel safe in their city. They don't want to think like, oh, I'm riding the subway to work and I have to worry if I'm going to get there safely. Oh, I'm getting in my car. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it? Or am I going to be surrounded and try to be dragged out of my car if some good citizen doesn't help? It's not even, you're having the police department or you're having that helping. You're having other citizens help citizens. Like what you talked about last week with like that in the Walmart parking lot, like that was a bunch of concerned citizens that helped out others when that man was on a stabbing spree. And it's getting to the point that I think people can't look the other way anymore, because again, no one's coming to save you if we don't start as we the people to say, this is not okay. This isn't enough. We have to take our cities back. It can't just be, yes, the president can federalize, but we have to say in our elections, like, we want leaders who are going to support safe cities.
And I agree with that. The founding fathers, they introduced the Second Amendment. Yes, it's used for tyrannical governments where again, they knew at that time that without the weapons, a tyrannical government would completely and utterly control you. But it wasn't the only reason they introduced the Second Amendment, because back then they didn't want the government, in control. They wanted a very, very small government, and they really thought it was up to the individual person to protect themselves. And if you look at all these different cities and you look at, DC, that's a perfect example, you're really not allowed to have a weapon there. And if the criminals know that you aren't allowed to have a weapon, well, then they feel empowered to do whatever they want there. And again, they're not following the law. They probably most likely have a weapon because they got it on the black market. And this is why you're seeing crime in so many different cities. And what's very interesting, the D's always like to focus in on a mass shooting or one shooting, but they never focus, or the news never focuses in on how many people are saved with weapons. And it's an astronomical number of people that are saved because people are carrying their weapons and they're keeping people safe if they see something happening.
Right. No, I think that's a very important part. I think, again, I said this before, I think it's a really important thing to go back and read the actual Constitution of the United States and what the Founding Fathers were trying to tell us. There are so many messages in not only the Constitution, but the Declaration of Independence and what their mindset was at that time and how they were feeling about the big government and tyrannical government and what that meant, and why empowering yourself, is so important, because you have to be responsible for you. And I think we've gotten so far away as a society about depending on the government for food, depending on the government for, this, that. Oh, the government tells me that this is healthy for me, so I will do this. The government tells me to do that. And you're getting so, you're dependent on that. And you're not going to yourself and looking inside and saying, what do I need to do today to live my best life, to be a good citizen, a good person, and empower myself to be successful? No, again, I say no one's coming to save you. And I don't mean that to be jaded or sound cynical, but I feel like you have to take ownership of your life. And, and you can't just think like, oh, well, I'm going to go from mommy and daddy's house and now the government is going to take care of me and make everything better. And I think that, or I'm going to just go out and, go take what I want and there's no consequences and whatever. I don't really care.
Well, I think that's what's missing in this country is consequences. And I think this is what the D's, the agenda was, to make it seem like you could do whatever you want. And you could see that they've been brainwashing the younger generation over and over and
Absolutely.
over through education. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But
yeah,
I mean, you could see that most of the individuals today, the young generation who are out there, they believe there's no consequence because in the blue cities, there are no consequences. There's no cash on bail. They like the criminals out on the streets.
Right.
They keep releasing them. They keep making excuses, especially if you look at the illegals, for example.
Right.
They commit crimes on the street, but they never mention the crimes that they commit. They just say, oh, this person, wants to be a citizen, or the person is a citizen, even though they're illegal. They never talk about the crimes that they have committed because, again, those people that are in government, they are criminals themselves.
Right. Or they just let them back out again, right back out onto the streets as if nothing happened. It's like a joke, And even look at LA, the shoplifters, what are you allowed to shoplift up to like $900? Like, think about
I think that law, a lot
that...
of the laws have been backtracked right now. That it used to be like that. And of course, that somebody was benefiting from that, where that was the big push, straws going up turtles' noses, which is absolutely ridiculous. But you could see that this is what they do. They push out lies, just like they pushed out the lie about COVID. They pushed out the lie about gain of function. They pushed out the lie about all this. And now Tulsi Gabbard is looking into the gain of function. She's investigating Fauci.
So it's so overdue, and it is his time because, what he did, it's truly a crime against humanity. When you look at the lies and how, when after the few doctors and medical professionals that did try to stand up to him and to have a voice during COVID, and they were either silenced, they were put down, they were told they were crazy. And now they're all trying to backtrack, and not just our country, but other countries too, saying like, oh no, you had a choice to get vaccinated, and and really I don't think a lot of people did think they had a choice whether to get vaccinated and based on the information that was being presented at that time.
No, I think most of the people were put into a state of fear.
Yes.
And the fear drove them to get vaccinated because they believed what they were hearing on the news. And right now we have Jay Bhattacharya, we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. She's now saying that they're actually looking into what Fauci has done. Again, we know that Rand Paul questioned him in Congress, and we're finding out, and I think we all knew this, that he lied to Congress about everything. Remember, they told us from the very, very beginning. And there's emails showing that Fauci was actually pushing this narrative that gain of function came from the wet market.
Right.
When there was a lab 20 miles away that was working on gain of function. So,
which he knew because we were involved, we were help funding some of these labs that were in these other countries doing these kinds of experiments. He knew it. He knew it.
He knew it. Everyone knew it. And this is why these individuals use the auto pen to pardon themselves, because they know they're guilty. Actually, the cover-up always gets you in the end.
But let me ask you, I mean, this is where I guess the auto pen is going to be so, I think, critical going forward, because was he even eligible for a pardon? And is it even a valid pardon at this point, you know, when all this information is coming out? It's an interesting question.
Well, you think about the pardons. Is anyone, the only reason you would need a pardon
right.
is if you already committed the crime.
Yes.
Or you've committed a crime.
Right.
If what they were telling you from the very, very beginning, like Fauci, like Adam Schiff, Brennan, Clapper, Pelosi, the January 6th Unselect Committee, as Trump would say, if they were telling the truth, there'd be no reason for a pardon whatsoever, because you didn't commit a crime, you didn't do anything wrong. But for them to actually go ahead and say, well, I want a pardon for future crimes or anything that I've said in the past, that really shows you that they're guilty. Now, of course, I know the fake news, they're going to be spinning it, saying, oh, they want the pardons because Trump is going to come after them. Trump is not going after anyone. They did this on their own. And the people, when they see the evidence, and this is very important, the evidence is going to be documented. The evidence is going to prove that they are guilty. And you know who's going to demand justice? The people.
Yeah. Well, it always goes back to that. And to me, I think we really have to ask ourselves, is an auto pen pardon even a real thing? You know, because has anyone even heard of an auto pen before Biden? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just become this rhetoric that it's like, oh, well, it's an auto pen pardon, as if that's a real normal thing. And I don't see how. I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves: is that even acceptable?
Well, they do use the auto pen for other things where they're just signing things, but for a pardon, I think the pardon or anything official should be done by the president with his own hand, or his or her own hand.
Especially with a pardon, because a pardon is very specific based on the person and the reason for the pardon.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. And what's very interesting, I mean, now that they're investigating Fauci and Tulsi Gabbard, she actually let us know that, yes, there is an investigation going on. You have to remember that the deep state players, they've been working on gain of function for quite a while. And this is why they've been trying to defend Ukraine for a very long time, because within Ukraine, they actually discovered around 30 labs. And the labs in Ukraine were working on gain of function. They were working on anthrax. They were working on the avian flu. Now think about this for a second. When Russia went into Ukraine and they discovered these biolabs, remember, the Ukraine war was started by the deep state players, Victoria Nuland, Obama, Biden, Hillary Clinton. They had a coup and they basically overthrew the Ukrainian government during that period of time. And they were trying to hide the fact that they were working on all these things. Now think about it. Go back to 9/11. Was there an anthrax scare?
Yes.
Yes.
I remember that.
Remember the avian flu scare?
Yes.
Remember the COVID scare? Well, this is where they actually worked on all of these viruses. Now, again, yes, they have other locations, but this was their main hub where they worked on everything. And Russia actually reported this to the UN. They have the documents.
Well, you know, it's funny because Bill Gates has already alluded to the fact that there's going to be another kind of pandemic. I mean, I don't know if he was saying that not that long ago, honestly. Like, how do they know? Because, how do they know?
Well, well, they know because they're going to release it.
Yeah,
But I think it's going to be very difficult to do another pandemic. I think because the
agree.
people of this country now are hardened. I think the people of the world are hardened now. And I don't think they're just going to believe that there's a pandemic,
right?
No matter what they say it is, because they're going to question everything. And I think the people are going to want proof this time around. I'm not saying 100% of the people. I think the majority of the people this time around, they're going to want a proof. And, people say, well, I don't believe that. Well, if the people actually believe the COVID pandemic and they still believe it, they still be getting their boosters. Now, I know there's people out there still getting their boosters. I don't know why, but the majority of the people, they're not getting that.
Right. Well, I think they realized really quickly, well, wait a minute, like a lot of things didn't make sense. I think you're right. I think initially fear mongering was a very big part of it. I also think that people didn't want to, they had also the fear of not being a part of society. Like, that's why they made our kids get vaccinated if they wanted to go to college, or, oh, you have to get vaccinated or you can't go to your job, and then people are like, well, how am I going to make a living? And they definitely didn't just use your fear of getting sick. They also used your fear of not being an active member of society. Well, if you don't do this, you don't get to do that. And that's threatening behavior. I mean,
okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there and move on. I'm running out of time here. Let me go ahead and click on this Rumble link and show you that this video does come from X22 Report, Best of Mr. and Mrs. X. And as I said in my daily news wrap-up, I will play the rest of this video along with some other great videos and information that I've put together in my playlist. But before we move on, I do want to share some information here with you from crypto.com. Very interesting stuff here.
Let's be clear, cryptocurrency is no longer emerging, it's here. And this latest move cements that reality in the biggest way yet. Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, the world's top crypto platform.
They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in CRO, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee DeFi, staking rewards, and real-world perks like cashback on your spends to launch America's first CRO treasury. When it's done, this new company will be the biggest CRO holder out there.
Want in on the action? Head to Crypto.com today and grab some CRO. Let's make crypto great again.
Okay, I just copied the live chat into a comment so that the live chat will be permanent. And, I'm sorry that the audio was lost there on X22 Report. For some reason, that happens once in a while in Rumble Studio. And, some people might wonder, well, why do I keep using it? And the reason that I do is because I can do other things while the videos are playing. If I do just if I create a live stream, I have to be strictly on the screen that I'm recording. Otherwise, anything else that I do, like go over to the chat box and chat a little bit with you, I can't do that. But in Rumble Studio, I do have the ability to do that. And also, Rumble Studio promotes my videos better than anything else. I mean, my viewership has grown. I've been able to inform a lot more people using Rumble Studio than I have in the past when I was just doing live streams or using OBS software to create live streams. It's really, really a useful tool. Then again, Rumble, they get hacked a lot because of the platform that they have and because of the ability for people to actually tell the truth. Now, this information that you heard tonight, you're probably not going to hear on the mainstream media. MSN, MS Now, or whatever the frick they call themselves, CNN, ABC, CBS. They're just not going to tell you the information that I've shared with you tonight. Now, let me go ahead and remind you folks that these videos do come directly from the producers that created them. I've got a link to the video channels and a link to the videos themselves. And these videos that I've shared with you are videos that I've posted on Mertech.com, where I have over 55 no nonsense, common sense, logic, and truth videos. I'd like to have shared all this information with you, but I just don't have the time. So that's why I put together my daily news wrap-up, which will be coming up here in about 9:30. So go ahead and take a break, grab a cup of coffee, grab a donut, grab a sandwich or a beer or a soft drink, and meet me back here at 9:30. Right now, I'm going to do what they call raid, if you're interested in watching some more information here, and send you over to Alex Newman's live stream. Not Alex Newman, but Alex Jones. There we go. Now, you should see this pop up here in about 3, 2, 1. Now you have the ability to watch that live stream from Alex Jones, and meet me back here at 9:30. So with that being said, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.